What's up YouTube, and welcome to a underwater Procreate tutorial where today I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can draw this scene step by step. Now of course you're going to need the requirements for today's design. They're completely free and available over on my Patreon, where you can find the canvas size and also the palette. If you're following along with a different app, you can find the palette image over on Patreon as well, where you can follow along with the same colors in your app of choice. Now as you can tell from my voice, I have a very sore throat at the time of recording this. So bear with me in this tutorial, and make sure to, of course, share your work with me wherever you decide to share them when you're done. And if you want to get access to a catalogue of over 100 exclusive tutorials, they're available over on my Patreon when you become a patron. There's a link to my Patreon in the description down below, where you can get early access to these tutorials, sneak peeks, and also have your name featured in videos. So make sure to check that out using the link in the description down below. Enjoy today's design, and let's get started. So once you've created your canvas, you can see from my layers that I've got my drawing guide up here as a layer. I've already added that in, and for you to add that in, you're just going to want to go ahead and go up to your actions, go to the option of add and insert a photo. So once you've got your guide in here, it just lays out a few simple things that we can just get structured in the right angle and perspective. So we're going to start in this area over here in a moment with our columns. First of all, let's go ahead and go to our layers. Let's go to our background color. Let's set this color here in the bottom right of the palette and hit done. And then we're going to go ahead and create a new layer. Make sure it's underneath your guide, and then change your color to the middle color in the far right column. You want to grab your brush. We're going to want to go ahead and go into the option of airbrushing and the soft brush. And let's set the size to around about sort of 20%. We want to go ahead and just in fact, let's go a bit larger than that. Let's go up to about 29. Let's go ahead and make sure that the very bottom is nice and blue all the way through to this kind of point here. And then we want to kind of curve this up and somewhat lean it over the top of what will be our columns. And you want to do the same obviously on both sides. So you get this kind of pointed in kind of V shape. You're leaving the blue in the middle. And then we want to grab our colors and grab the color in the top right of the palette there. And we're going to go ahead and go through the middle again, round about here, and then make sure we get a bit of a curved nature to this as well. So we're trying to create a real blend out of the lighting, leaving a lot of the blue in the middle. Now one thing you can also go ahead and do is grab your eraser and tap on your eraser and use airbrushing and the soft brush. Set that brush size to maybe around about sort of 20 to 25%, and just sort of erase into the middle, and maybe just bring the blue back in a little bit at the top, just in case you got rid of it a little bit too much. And you can maybe even bring it down in the middle ever so slightly. You could probably go a bit larger. There we go. And then what we'll do is we'll put it on a separate layer. We'll create a new layer. We'll go to our colors and grab the color in the bottom right of the palette, and we'll go ahead and go back to our brush, soft brush again, and we're going to introduce a bit of blue down here with a curved nature to it, so that it kind of makes its way backwards in the center. So we're just curving our color a little, something like this. It gets a little bit bluer back there, a little bit more murky. You can always go ahead and grab your eraser as well again and just blend out the top edge, just in case you need to. You can always come back to this layer though. Let's go ahead then and swipe from left to right on both of those, group them together, and we'll call it BG, just for background. And we'll close that down. We'll go ahead and start on our column on the right hand side. So we'll create a new layer. We'll go to our colors. We're going to start off with the middle color in the second column from the right. We want to go to our brush and use the option of calligraphy and the monoline brush. And the brush itself under stabilization has around about 50% streamline and just under 40% of stabilization. That way you should be able to still get some nice bumps and lumps in there if you need to. Now the brush size doesn't really matter, but I'm going to set it to around about 2%. If we take a look, zooming in, we can see this area here is what we want to try and add in. So we're going to get rid of that. We're going to start up here, we're going to come down. It does not matter if your line is not straight at all. It honestly really will not matter. If anything, it might add the tiniest bit more character if it's not perfectly straight. You see I've gone all the way down, and as I get towards the bottom, I'm just going to round that off. And because I went to the edge of the canvas, I should be able to drag and drop the color in. And let's go to our layers. Let's create a new layer and drag it underneath that layer. We'll go to our colors and we'll grab the color at the top of the second column from the right. And we're going to draw in the underside. So we want to go ahead first of all and just draw a line through the body of what we were just drawing. So I'm drawing as we speak all the way down to this little point at the bottom. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw in this line here all the way down. And then it doesn't really matter where it falls off. You can draw a line across if you want to, just for perspective. Drag and drop the colour in, and then grab your eraser. I'll just use calligraphy and the monoline brush, and I'll just shave off the end there. There we go. So that's the top area done. We can go ahead and draw in the actual column itself. So we're going to go ahead and turn off both of those layers. We're going to create a new layer in front of both of them. We're going to go to our colors, making sure it's still the color here, top of the second column from the right. Still want to be using the monoline brush, and we want to be drawing in our column. Now we do need to somewhat just only draw in the outside. We don't need to draw any of the details yet. So we'll go ahead and first of all go up to our guide and tap on it and invert it so it switches it from black to white. And then on that layer, we're going to go ahead to the new layer that we created. We're going to zoom in. We want to go ahead and create the top of our little column so it's slightly square at the top. And then it comes into here, it makes its way in behind. We're not interested in like these lines here. They're not interesting just yet. And then if you want to, you can just draw a straight line. It's quite a long line, so it's up to you if you want to draw it manually or just draw it like that. And then let's bring the brush size right down to 1% and just draw in these interesting little architectural sort of styling of this column. We can always sharpen it up if we want to. I'm drawing as we speak, just drawing in all of the steps all the way down to the ground. Just draw that down into there. And then let's go ahead and draw in a line. It can be a little bit uneven, that's perfectly fine. And then it can also just kind of run off a bit more of an angle than that. It needs to make its way a little bit further backwards like so. We're not going to see this area here in a moment, so it doesn't really matter too much if I'm honest. I'm going to go right back up to the top though, and I'm going to draw this in again. It just does not matter if the stone is not perfectly straight. I think if anything, it adds more character to it. The only one that's, again, a fairly long line, we'll just draw it in with a straight line. And then we'll just draw in these areas here. A lot of them will get covered up, and that's why you can see here my guide kind of basically comes to an end. So you can just draw it off to the right like this, nice and lazy. And we can drag and drop the color. Now we've got to work out where we missed a gap in our design. So just triple checking where that gap is. Now it doesn't look like there's a gap. If I just drag my color in here, if I drag it to the right, the threshold at the top gets higher. If I drag it to the left, it gets lower, and eventually it just stays within the line. So that's fine. So we've got our column now in play. The only thing I think I'll just do is just to maybe just square that off a tiny bit more at the bottom and drag and drop the color in. So we've drawn in our shapes. We're going to carry on concentrating here on the actual column though. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer and tap on it and clip it to the column. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab this color here, bottom of the third column from the right. And our brush, we're going to go ahead and under calligraphy, we're going to use the chalk brush. The brush size I've got set is 4%. And what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the top edges of these areas here that are going to get some lighting. So you can just really bring your guide all the way down. It really doesn't matter if you can't see it. You can leave it if you want to. We're going to go ahead and run our pen along here. So this surface here is getting some lighting from above, and I'm going across it a couple of times. I'm trying to use the smaller brush size so I can create layers of all of this kind of texture so it looks very stone-like. And you can get in there and you can really brighten it up through the middle and really add some lighting to it. You can add the tiniest amount of lighting that makes its way around the rear side of it. You know, just some really light scrapes. If you keep your pen pressure really light, you'll be able to really take advantage of this. And then on the rear, just add in a little bit of light back there. So we'll just leave it really faint in this area here. And then we want to isolate other ledges and surfaces. So we'll go along here again. Do your brighter side first before you do this side panel, I would recommend from this point. So we'll draw in multiple times, just trying to create ledge after ledge with all of the lighting. We're going to come round from here, all the way around. And then we're going to keep adding in this texture on top of these steps. I'm drawing a little bit more along here too. And at this point, you do need to somewhat just keep an eye on the guide because it does highlight a few things such as angle and all of the different points in which all of these steps start to fall off and wrap around the other side. I've gone a little bit further than the guide there. And I'll do the same at the bottom because I want to kind of square it off a bit more. So I'm going to go along there, adding in scrape after scrape, making my way back towards this point. When you've got these kind of step-like shapes here, again, we can go ahead and just add in the tiniest little bit on the rear. And I mean really, really light amount of scrapes here because it's in the shadows. It's just a top surface, so it might see something of the light, but not enough. Likewise here too, we add in the tiniest little scrapes back there. Now they're looking nice and lit from above. We've also got the column at the top. Now one thing I want you to try and do with the column at the top is kind of introduce like lots of like grooves in it. So you can create all of these interesting like grooves in here, different ledges. Obviously follow the perspective of the guide then as well, so that you get some of those very faint lines run off the back. But to be honest, once they get up towards this area here, we're not going to add any of those faint lines anymore because they'll just be completely hidden. So we can kind of give the impression that this has got multiple tiers to it. Now, I'll show you a trick as well in a minute. Once we've drawn in a few different lines in here, just a few, and I'll undo that last one because the angle wasn't quite right. Sometimes I like to keep those things in the video just so you can see the things to try and avoid. I'll go across the tiniest little bit, couple of tiny scrapes. Then what you can do is go to the basic shape underneath, and then you can grab your eraser. You can tap on your eraser and use the monoline brush and bring that all the way down to 1%. And then you can create interesting cuts in here. So I can go ahead, for example, and just create like a cut into here. And then that shows that that bright ledge is getting lit because it's sticking out almost ever so slightly. So you can create interesting curves and breaks into the rock by just doing your line work first. You can create all of those little cuts in there, and then that gives you reasoning as to why those shadows are where they are. You could do the same on the rear if you wanted to, you know, just try and mimic the opposite side. It's not really critical because a lot of this does get covered up, but you can just introduce some sort of interesting elements to it. And then go back to your layer that's got all your highlight lines on it and just maybe flush them out the tiniest little bit more. Now you've got your grooves in there. I can add some onto there. You know, I could really chuck some color into that one and really brighten this up before it hits the underside. And you can do lots of little light scrapes in the gaps if you want to, just to kind of give it some texture. But that's what we're going to roll with. If you find that your perspective is slightly wrong, you can always go ahead and make a selection, for example, and draw straight down through there, circling this left side. Tap on your point at the top and then grab your cursor. Grab the option of distort and just pivot those lines up if you feel that yours requires it. Yours may not. Mine just needed a little bit of action, a little bit of love. And then I'll grab my selection tool again and cut straight through there once more and grab the right side as well. So these are just little extra tools that you can do if you ever sort of run into this type of issue. So I'm grabbing my cursor, using distort. I'm just going to stretch that node up in the same way. Bring that down. And that's fine. I'll tap on my cursor when I'm done. That's on what lines up. Now let's go ahead and actually texture the actual side of it. So we're going to go ahead and tap on the base shape and create a new layer so it sticks itself in the middle. We'll go to our colors and grab the, that is the middle color in the second column from the right. We'll go to our brush and textures, and we're going to use this brush here. I'm not going to pronounce it, but you can see it on screen. And the size is going to be set to about 8%. Now, just very quickly, if I draw this down, notice how there's lines running vertically because it's following the contour of the brush and the actual canvas orientation. So if I rotate my canvas horizontally and then go along here, I'll get those lines running along it horizontally. So if I rotate it a smidge more to the right, those lines should start to line up against the edge of the column. Don't worry about running over this line. We'll fix that in a minute. In fact, don't be afraid to even go over the line. Perfectly fine. We're just trying to highlight though this side of the column, so we're going to go along them. We're going to go up towards the top just a little bit, like so. And then we want to also introduce another color tone, so it's the bottom of the second column from the right, and we'll introduce a bit more green in here now. You can press really lightly, it will blend together nicely. We'll get some blue and green hues in here, and we'll go all the way up to the top, even though we'll get rid of it. So let's rotate it back into play. Now we can go ahead and just tap on this layer that we just added and add a mask to it so we can start to hide stuff of it. So the mask is white. Make sure your brush is set to black. Go to your brush and set it to, let's go to airbrushing and a soft brush. And we're just going to set the brush size to something fairly small. And you want to look for the underside of areas that you know are going to be dark. So this is definitely going to be dark. And to be honest, I'm going to go up to about 5% now and just blend this at the top because we want to take the lighting down of that a little bit. Then bring the brush size down to say 1% and get underneath those bright areas that you created earlier, because they're ledges that are getting lighting. They'll create shadows that sit underneath them, like so. Then we've got the underside of this area here. Now, if you go to your guide and you turn that back up to a high level, you'll be able to see this kind of curve almost shape here. We want this to be curved and we want a shadow underneath there. So we just want to go ahead now and get rid of all of that lighting under there into this corner and then round it off. So create a round shape. You can even just draw an arc if you want to, all the way across, and then get rid of the lighting from under here. The lighting's of course coming from above. Turn off your guide and you should be able to see your column there making its way up into this kind of cubic shape. And then grab your airbrush around about 4% and blend from the top down, because again the cubic area would also darken that up. Then what we want to do is we want to go ahead and bring back in our guide because it shows this line here that runs down. So we want to go ahead and go down here and blend that out completely, fading it out. Again, turn off your guide to see what work you've done. You've now focused the lighting on this left-hand side. We're going to go ahead and zoom in. We don't really need our guide on for a minute, but we can set this down to about 1 or 2% and get underneath these ledges here. Get rid of that lighting, then set it a little bit larger and kind of blend it down. Leave a little bit of that texture though, because it will look great, but you just want that massive overhang of lighting and the shadow. We'll do the same under that one. So I'm imagining this one, as you can see on the left hand side, is a bit more squared off. So I'm going to run that into there like so. I'm definitely going to run it across to the right. And then I'm going to set it a bit bigger, about 2% now, and just blend out at the bottom, creating that lovely drop shadow. You can separate your areas there if you want to. You know, you can create like a bit of a shadow just there, just to separate them. We can always go ahead and add in a bit of a shadow at the bottom of this one, just very, very light. Just a little bit at the bottom edge of the steps, just to add in some different hues. And 2% down at the bottom here, fading that out. And again, let's get rid of it off the corner of these steps. Lovely. So we should have some lighting on your column now that nicely fits the rest of the design. Now, before we move on though, I want to go ahead and create one more new layer for the column. I'll just create a new layer. It will clip itself here. We'll go to our colors and grab this color here, bottom of the third column from the right, and your brush wants to be painting and the stucco brush. Let's set the size to around, let's try the 4% marker. In fact, that's too small. Let's go up to 9. And we just want to sort of tap away in here and see if we can add in, you know, maybe you want to kind of go a bit horizontal with a scrape or two, just some kind of variation and, you know, kind of cracks or little accents of lighting as such, just to kind of break that down a bit more and make it a bit more interesting to look at. And that's pretty good. I think we could add in the odd little streak maybe under here. That's too big. The brush is too big in that space. Just a couple little sort of eroded areas maybe. Just something where the light's just somehow landing on it and catching on it. It just makes it a little bit more eroded as well. But if you've done too much, as always, just grab your eraser. Make sure it's set to soft airbrush if you want to, just to fade it out a bit more. And just blend out a few of those areas, leaving them maybe a few of them a little bit more opaque than the rest. Awesome. So we've got our column in play. Let's just quickly go ahead then and turn on the two ledges that sit above it. So turn on these two ledges here. Now you can see how it sits within the kind of structure. Let's just affect this layer here first. So we're going to go ahead and tap on that and alpha lock it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go to our colors and grab the color here, top of the second column from the right, and drag it in. So you'll lose it temporarily. Then go to your colors and grab the middle color in the second column from the right. Your brush wants to be under textures, the same brush we were using before. We'll call it Mellow, just in case we come back to it. So we're going to use the Mellow brush and go about 9%, and we're just going to add in some texture along there, hopefully leaving a few areas a little bit more patchy. You can then go ahead and grab the green at the bottom of that second column from the right and kind of focus that a little bit, maybe across the top, adding in a bit more green on there. Lovely. And then we'll go ahead and do the same. We'll grab the, what color is that? This bottom of the third column from the right, painting, and we're going to go to painting and the stucco brush. Let's go to about sort of about 7% and see if we can run some scrapes through here in that kind of angled fashion. And don't worry if you make them a little bit brighter towards the top edge. If anything, that might look quite good with the lighting landing on the very, very edge there. And a couple of scrapes in there at those angles will look fantastic. So just don't be afraid to really make it quite decayed and worn. Awesome. So we've got our top ledge there. We can then go ahead and go to our column. So here we have 4 layers in total, including the mask. It's up to you. What you can do is you can group them together. You can just rename this and call it column. You can collapse the column down. You can go ahead and swipe it to the left and duplicate it, and then tap on the bottom one and flatten it. So it's now 1 layer. Grab your cursor and use the option of uniform. We're going to zoom in and we're going to scale it down in size. We're going to push it further back. So you want to look at this area here and this area here and try and align them. But also you want to be looking at the bottom here and also thinking, how can we go ahead and fit another column in that matches up to the kind of ground as well. So we're trying to find a spot for it, which that looks pretty good. And then we can tap on our cursor when we're done. You can see they kind of follow each other and that nicely follows each other. Then grab your layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, and grab the bottom one out of the 2. Grab your cursor, uniform again, scaling it down in size. We're going to go for 1 more, a little bit further back. That one looks pretty good, almost first time. Yeah, I'm going to leave that. And then we want to fit 1 more over here on the right hand side. So we're going to go to our big column group, swipe that to the left again and duplicate it. Flatten the top one, like so. Then grab your cursor and scale it up in size. Move it off to the right, keep going until it obviously sits a little bit closer towards us. And of course, we're looking for those lines to all kind of follow suit with each other. So there's not very much of a gap between these. And I might go a little bit bigger and try and sort of space them out the tiniest bit more as we're a little bit closer towards it. That looks pretty good. Let's tap on our cursor when we're done. Take a look at it by zooming out. Awesome. So now we've got the right hand side all done. We can go ahead and we can simply pinch all of them together into 1 layer. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and go to our adjustments. We can go to the option of Gaussian blur. We want to tap on this arrow here and change it to the option of pencil. It will be set to 60% and you want to make sure your brush is set to airbrushing and the soft brush. If we set this fairly large, around about say 30 to 35%, that's way too big actually, sorry, at 19. We just want to go down here a few times. What we're trying to do is we're trying to leave this one in focus, and then the ones in the distance, we want to slowly keep layering on the blur one after the other and fading it out. We do not want to see this straight line anymore. It has to just fade off completely into the water, into the distance. So way over there on the left side, you can blur that like crazy, but just be gentle with it and take your time. Make sure this one stays in focus. But as long as there's some sort of remnants of a column back there, you've done a good job. So tap on your adjustments when you're done. Then what you can do is you can go ahead and use this again. So we go to our layer, we swipe it to the left and we duplicate it. We grab the top one, tap on your cursor, flip it horizontally and move it all the way off to that left hand side. Use snapping and it will snap itself to the left hand side of your canvas. Tap on your cursor when you're done. And then go to your layer and pinch the 2 of them together onto 1 layer. Next up, let's go ahead and add in some lighting here at the top. So let's create a new layer. Let's drag it underneath our columns for a minute. So we'll drag it underneath. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab the color in the bottom right of the palette. And we're going to want to go ahead and go to our brush. We're going to go to the option of, we need to grab the waves brush. So it should be under the option of elements and oceans, sorry. Maximum brush size, just go ahead and go left to right along here. You might not be able to see it too well, but it doesn't really matter. Just go left to right all the way up your canvas, hopefully in one motion so you don't overlap or add too much texture. A little something like this. Then we'll go ahead and we'll tap on the layer. We will go ahead and bring the blend mode to the option of add. Don't worry about this for a minute. Let's just bring it down to say 30 just for a moment. Then we're going to grab our cursor. we're going to use the option of distort, and we're going to grab the bottom node in the middle, bring that up to where your columns were in this space here. We're going to grab the bottom right node and bring that across and into there, and the bottom left into that space. So hopefully we create this kind of like ceiling of water almost. And you can bring that into your columns a little bit more so it's not quite so tight. And also it makes the waves look like they're right above us, and we can just make that a little bit taller. Then we can tap on our cursor when we're done. We can go ahead and go to our layer. We can tap on it and add a mask to it, and then making sure you're on the mask and your color is set to black. Go to your brush and go to the option of airbrushing and the soft brush. And around about 20 to 25%, we're just going to blend out the bottom because those waves at the top there would fade right out in the distance. We're not too interested in them. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go to our layer. We will swipe it to the left and duplicate it. So we've got 2 of the waves. Grab the bottom one out the 2. Grab your cursor and then flip it vertically and drag it down. Now, of course, at the minute it's going to look a little bit odd. So you can just grab distort and start to stretch this out to fit the ground. So we're just dragging it out to fit the whole area of the ground. Flatten it down as well, so you get some of the ripples on the ground, and just make it as wide as you need to, like so. I might just bring it a little bit further down and tap on my cursor when I'm done. So zooming in, this is what it should then look like, and you want to maybe bring that bottom one down just a little bit more than that. It's a bit too bright, so I'm going to go down to around about 15%, and the top one for me, I'm going to bring it down to around about the 25% mark. Yours may vary simply because of the amount of color that you've maybe left in the ceiling area, but that's totally up to you what you want to do. Now above our columns, let's create a new layer. Let's then go ahead and swipe down. So create a new layer. Let's go ahead and tap away, swipe down with 3 fingers and go to the option of copy all. Swipe down with 3 fingers and go to paste. Then we should have a brand new layer here with everything on. If we go ahead and tap on the blend mode of it and change it to lighten, then go to your adjustments and Gauge and blur. If you swipe from left to right now, you can get this kind of really murky underwater kind of vibe to it. And we really want that look to it. And somewhere between like 8 to probably up to, you could probably go a bit higher if you really wanted to, up to like 13. I really like it around about the 9% mark. So when I'm done, I'm just going to simply tap on my adjustments, and it gives your whole design this underwater, like you can't see through it kind of vibe. Next, let's go ahead then and draw in some rocks that sit at the bottom. So at this point, you can swipe from left to right on pretty much all of these elements back here, and group them together, and you could just call it we'll call it mid-ground maybe. And we can collapse that down. If you want to, you're more than welcome to tap on it and flatten, I believe, but obviously you'll be a bit restricted later on if you want to make any changes. We'll create a new layer. We'll go ahead and go to our colors, and we're going to go ahead and grab this color here, top of the 3rd column. Now with your brush set to the option of calligraphy and the monoline brush again, with a 1% brush size, we're going to start drawing in some rocks in the bottom right and left area of your design. Now bear in mind that we're going to create like 5 different layers here, and we want to start off front to back towards the mid area. So we want to somewhat create a couple of different sort of tiers of rock. So we're going to create a new big one here, create a loop, drag and drop the color in, and then we will go ahead and turn on our guide just so you can see that plinth there in the middle. And then on this layer we want to go ahead then and create the opposite side rock. So I'm going to make it a tiny bit different in terms of its design, and then drag and drop the color in. I'll then go ahead and create a new layer and drag it underneath those rocks, and we'll draw in our next tier of rocks. So we can go ahead and draw in like one maybe that has like a flatter edge to it, a bit of a point on it, and drag it all the way under into the right hand side, so you can drag and drop the color in. And maybe I'll just create like a little extra ledge on top of that, fill in any gap. I'll move across to the left hand side, draw something fairly similar. So we'll go ahead and maybe create like a different type of rock on this side, and then go all the way around so you can drag and drop the color in again. Keep an eye on your heights, make sure that they're not too far away from each other. Create a new layer, drag it underneath those rocks. We're going to do 5 to 6 layers total. Zooming in over here. Now maybe at this point we want to go ahead and draw in like a boulder style kind of shape, so a bit more rounded, a bit more blocky at the same time. And then let's move across to this side. Let's go ahead then and maybe do something fairly similar, a bit more rounded, cut it under there, drag and drop your color in. So we're really trying to create like a bit of a frame here. Now the only thing you want to kind of keep an eye out for is this kind of curve here. See on this side how it's a bit more bumpy and lumpy? that's kind of what we want to go for. So on the next one over here, I want to bring in a rock that somewhat comes in like this so we can get rid of this curved nature a bit more. I can always go back, of course. So I'll create a new layer and drag it underneath those rocks. I'm going to move over to the right hand side over here. I'm going to create a fairly steep rock now. I want this to kind of come in from up here all the way down into here almost, and then go all the way to the right. It's a fairly steep one, a little bit different from these flatter ones here. We'll move back over to the opposite side. Again, a fairly similar kind of concept, except as I mentioned, I want to kind of create one that kind of brings its weight in a bit more. So I'll create like a really fairly large one there. And that's creating that lovely arc shape framing our plinth. We'll then create another new layer, drag it underneath those rocks. And we'll move over to this side. We'll create a smaller rock now. We're getting a little bit further back. So let's maybe create like a little one like this, drag it over. In fact, that one's a little bit too rounded. I'm starting outside the shape and coming across. I'm going to try and create like a bit of an overhang and then over to the right, drag and drop my color in. So that way, if I go here, in, and then back out, I create the loop so I can drag and drop the color in. Of course, this side we'll do something fairly similar, coming in from the bottom this time. Maybe this one's a little bit smaller. I'll drag and drop the color in. And we're getting a little bit further back now, which is great. Create a new layer. We'll make this the last one, so we'll drag it underneath those rocks. We'll zoom in, and we're going to put a rock of some sort just in front of here. So I'm going to just create like a bit of a flatter one, maybe like this, bit of a disc-like shape. I want to keep some of my column there, so I'll drag and drop the color in. Awesome. And we'll do another one over here. Maybe you don't need to go to the edge of the canvas on this occasion, so bear that in mind, that you can just create like a bit of a loop and then drag and drop your color in. Take a look at your work. I like the fact that this one's a little bit further back as well. That just gives a little bit of an unbalance to it. Now, you might be asking, Joel, why did we keep creating different layers? Well, it's a perfect opportunity now to show you why, because we can turn off all of the ones underneath the top set of rocks, so these ones here at the front. If we now tap on them and we alpha lock them, meaning we can't paint outside of them on what's already on that layer, it allows us now to chuck loads of color in, and the shapes are already separated from one another. So you don't need to worry about running into a different rock and different shape, etc. So what we'll do is we'll go to our brush and we'll go to the option of painting, and we're going to use the stucco brush for all of this. Going to use the stucco. We're going to go to our colors. Now take a look at the colors that we've got here. We've got, that's the base color, and then these four here underneath are our colors to highlight. So we've got mid-tones in these two and some highlight tones in these two. So we'll grab this lovely green in the middle of the third column, and lighting's from above. So you want to kind of go, well, I've got a little bit of a ledge here. Can I go across here? And I'm going to make the brush size a bit bigger, 10%. And I'm just coming across here. Look at how quick and easy I'm doing it. And then in the gaps, I'll just tap a few times. The stucco should give you lots of texture. And then we can go to our colors and move through the rest of them. So we grab the bottom of the third column, a little bit more gray now. Tapping a few times in there, scrapes. Let they all layer on top of each other. And then we'll go to our colors. We'll grab the bottom of the fourth column. And we'll chuck in some color on here. So I'm going to brighten up that top edge. Definitely add some color in from there. Little couple of scrapes, maybe a little bit that comes in from this side. There's no right or wrong necessarily, but just keep playing around and see what you like. I'm just going to undo a few times, and then I'll go to my colors and grab the middle of the fourth column. This is your kind of final gray-like tone. You don't have to get rid of all of that yellow. You can just tap a few times in there just to dash it in. And then go to your colors and grab the base color again, so the top of the third column. So you go round in a loop. You've got base color, you run through these colors, and then you go back to your base color. If you set the brush then to say 7%, you can tap in there now and start to bring back in some of these lovely dark scrapes and tones in here. Don't be afraid, especially the ones here at the front, to really get rid of some of those brighter tones in the rock. And the odd little area where you think is necessary or is achievable to add in some texture will look great. So even think about making it like about 17% and tap a few times. Let the brush use that texture and see if it can aid you in some way. You can tap a few times, you can do minor little scrapes here and there, and it should hopefully build up a boatload of texture in that rock. And we've got the other side to do. So you can do the same color on both sides and then go through them, or you can just do one rock at a time. It's totally up to you. So I've got it set to 9% now. I'm going to go ahead, run this through, and I'm basically trying to brighten up the top surface and then creating some flat ledges and then some lines of sort like this to create kind of side profiles. I'll grab the bottom of the third column then now and just try and build on top of those tones. I won't go into some of the shaded area too much in the bottom left. Bottom of the fourth column, and we add in some more here and there. So hopefully I'm not going too fast for you, but the steps are all very much repeating. So middle of the fourth column now. And hopefully you can then, once you've learnt the formula as such, you can now go back in with your base color and you'll be wild and free and you can do as you wish. I'm just going to go ahead and just tuck away a few of those tones. I want to definitely get a bit braver with like a 4% in here and try and, you know, create little avenues, little areas of texture. Tapping will look great. You'll create lots of scuffs and buffs down here. Zoom out as well. Don't get lost in those details too much. When you zoom all the way out, you get your full picture. And these ones at the front, you can add a little bit more love to them. And then the ones that get further back, you can simplify as you go. So if you're going to speed off and leave me for a moment, that's just something to consider. So we'll turn on the next layer down. We'll tap on it and alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors and we will grab the middle of the third column there, and we'll set our brush to around about 9 or 10%. Brighten up the top surfaces that you think you can see in that rock shape and that formation, and leave these dark corners, etc. And then you don't have to do every color either. You can skip a color or two occasionally, but I won't on this occasion, but it's something you can do. So bottom of the third column now, a few taps in there. Lovely, a little bit brighter on there. And then bottom of the fourth column, couple more scrapes on there too. Lovely, and we'll grab the grey. The grey is really nice because it tones down the yellow tone in my opinion. And then we go back in with the base colour, about sort of 7% still. And then you can just run like a big scrape like that up through the rock. You decide. And you can also go ahead and just maybe add in a little bit of darkness behind a rock just to hopefully separate them a little bit more. A little something like that maybe. We'll move across to this side over here. Different rocks will give you different styles. So for example, using the middle colour in the third column there, this one's got what looks like to me a really flat top surface on it. So I can set the brush size to like a 4%, scrape through there, create a flat surface on there too, and maybe some diagonal lines linking the two together, but definitely creating like a flat surface up on here, leaving that underside nice and dark. Maybe the odd little scrape of grey, but leaving this big surface here for us to play with then. So bottom now of that third column, a couple of scrapes in there, definitely brightening up the edge over there. Lovely. Don't be afraid to be bold with the colour strokes as well, you know, chuck in some colour, allow it just to splash in there. And again, always zoom out, make sure you don't get lost in it. I'm going to jump this time to the middle of the fourth column, add in some of this light grey, a little bit more blue-like tone to it. And a couple of the odd little scrapes there, just to break down that solid line just a tiny bit with like a little bump and a lump like that. Zooming out. Now I can definitely go back in with the base colour, the top of the third column, and just get away into there. So can I go ahead and sort of draw in some groove-like lines in here? Set that to a little bit bigger. Let's get rid of that marker. Let's go to about 6%. Tapping away on there, just to try and add in a few areas of detail. Awesome. I love how this line, just a random line that's come across, if I zoom out, it just looks like it fits the area quite nicely. So I'll just leave it. Happy little mistakes. Awesome. Let's carry on moving through our rocks. Next layer down, turn it on, tap on it, alpha lock it, go to your colors and grab the middle of the third column again. What have we got here? Big kind of boulder like shape. So maybe let's go up to 12% and just go two big strokes. So one across the top. You know, maybe you want to do that again so you've not already got a boatload of color already on there. Or you just go like a curve and a dash. You know, whatever you think will look quite nice. I think when you've got these ones here with an angled line there, if you follow those angles and you do something like that, it looks like it fits the shape quite well. Bottom of the third column. Let's go again, 6% now. Just adding in some additional color tones on the top edges. And we go back in, bottom of the fourth. I really like this yellowy tone for some of these rocks. And we'll grab then the middle of the fourth column. So hopefully, again, I'm not going too fast. There is ways you can slow me down in the YouTube player, by the way. There's a link to a video in the description down below. Grab the base color again, top of the third column, and you can just break them down. Yeah, you can slow me down a little bit. You'll still get captions on the screen as well, just in case you're needing them because of my voice today. But hopefully you're following along well. Awesome. I'm going to leave that. Do you know what, actually, tell a lie. I'm going to go back in with the second color in that third column and just add in a little bit more in these darker areas, just a little bit more stone-like color. I'll move across to this side. I've got 1, 2, 3 little bumps, so I can go ahead and kind of work around them. I can add in a big bit of color on there, maybe then some vertical lines, maybe running here, and then a flat ledge again, and then maybe some kind of scrape lines upwards here. Definitely a bit brighter though on here. Maybe that wraps round into behind there. Awesome. Let's go to our colors. Let's grab the bottom of the third column. 4%, adding in some scrapes, some bumps, some lumps, some interesting textures. So something like this does take a little bit of time, but it really helps the whole scene like have so much full content to it, context. Bottom of the fourth column now. Awesome. Let's grab the bluey tone, middle of that fourth column, and you tap away. And don't get me wrong, they're a little bit boring for me necessarily as well to do, but you know, they do fill out the whole scene. You give yourself some nice content, really adding in some detail and just full story and structure to your whole design that you've got going on. A couple of scrapes up in there. That rock's got a nice little worn look to it, and that's really nicely coming together. Let's go ahead and go down a next set of rocks. Tap on the tick to turn it on, tap on the layer to alpha lock it. Colors, we'll grab the middle of the third column there, and we will carry on. That's all we need to do, make all those noises. That is mandatory. Let's just quickly do the opposite side. There we go. And we'll go to our guide actually and turn that off. I don't need that on for a minute. Bottom of that third column. Scraping some colour in there. Gonna finish this one. Bottom of the fourth column. Lovely brighter tones on those rocks, and a little bit of that yellow on that edge will look really nice, as if the staff in the middle is going to nicely sort of land some lighting on it. And then that nice blue tone in there. That side over there, I'm actually going to leave that rock now. I'm not going to add any darker details to it. One, it's getting further back, and we can afford not to add any more of those details. We can just leave it a little bit more blank. So let's carry on. Let's grab this bottom of the third column. Add in some colour into here. A little bit more of that yellowy tone in there. But occasionally, like I am on this side, I've definitely got a good solid amount of colour in here, but there's no breakup in the colour. So I will switch to the base colour top of that third column. So it's totally optional to do in terms of adding in detail. But if you feel like your rock's got maybe a little bit too much, you know, straightforward block of colour to it, just get in here and break it down a little bit where necessary. Cool, let's go ahead and carry on. Next layer down, turn it on, tap on it and alpha lock it. Let's go to our colors and grab the middle color in the third column. And again, quite another flat style rock, and I like them because you can leave these dark edges. A couple of vertical kind of lines underneath, but making sure that top edge is nice and gray. It's the same over here. You can go across the top edge, creating like a really flat surface to it, and then a couple of scrapes with the stucco brush like this, just to create this sort of side profile of the rock almost. Let's go to our colors and grab the bottom of the third column and keep going to a couple more colors. Make the brush house a bit smaller when it's a bit further back like this. A little bit over the top. Lovely. And we'll move across into here. We'll go to our colors and grab the bottom of the fourth column. And we'll just go ahead and leave it with a bit of yellow on it, because it will be quite close to the staff in the center, so we can Can leave it a little bit more yellowy toned. Well, I believe we've only got one more left to do, so we'll turn that on. We'll tap on it, we'll alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors and we will only use these two colors here. So middle of the third column, about 4 or 5%. Now, because these are getting a little bit further back, all of that kind of lighting is going to eventually start to fall off a little bit, and we won't be able to work it out too much. So a little bit of this color and then a little bit of this color is all we want to do back here. We don't want to add in too many of the yellowy tones, and just keep it really, really simple. Zoom out. That is all you need to do back there. And that one there, to be honest, needs to get blurred in a moment anyway. So we're going to go ahead and go to the opposite side, do the same. And we're just trying to abide by a little bit of the laws of like the color underwater. Not that I'm completely familiar with it, but it definitely is something we have to abide by a little bit, by the fact that they're getting further away. They're going to lose a little bit of their contrast as well. So we will start to think about that with these ones. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll go to our layer. First of all, we'll tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. We'll go to our adjustments and we'll go to gauge and blur, and we'll just blur these a tiny bit. So that's too much, obviously. I think 2% just about does it enough justice. So about 2%. Tap on your adjustments when you're done. They're just a little bit further back. We can take away a bit of their color. Let's add some shadows underneath them though. So we'll go to our rocks. Now, if you're done with them and you're completely happy with them, you can pinch all of them together, or you can swipe from left to right on all of them and group them together and just call that group rocks. I recommend keeping them just in case later on you think, hang on, I would actually like to separate them a little bit more. Let's then go ahead and collapse that group down though and create a new layer and drag it underneath the rocks. We're going to grab the color here. It's the top of the second column from the right, and your brush wants to be set to airbrushing and the soft brush. Bring that size down to about 4%, and we're going to go lightly underneath some of those rocks, 3% now. Just creating a bit of a shadow, a little bit further back as well, underneath that one. You might not be able to add it in under a lot of these areas anyway. That's perfectly fine. It's just a really subtle one in case you can see any ledges of like rock like this. A little one in there maybe, and a little bit under that one at the back. If you have any that are fairly close though, you do want to go to your colors and grab the color in the top left of the palette, and then zoom in and just shadow the very underside. So here, just shadow the very underside with about a 2% brush size, just to really darken that up to show that it's touching the surface like this. And then that way it looks a lot more convincing to the person looking at this that it does sit on the ground. Let's move across to the opposite side, maybe just the tiniest little overhang shadow like here, and then a little bit underneath that one. Lovely. Now, talking of the ground, we can actually go ahead and add some like yellowy tones into this space here. So we'll go to our layers, we'll go ahead and create a new layer. We want to drag it underneath those shadows, so into here. We'll go to our colors, and we're going to go ahead and grab the color at the top of the second column. Soft airbrush still. And we're going to go ahead and just in this space go left to right, adding in some sand color, getting really faint as you make your way further back. And just go to about 8%, get right underneath and get close to those areas. You want to kind of leave like this kind of faded effect between the sand and the blue that would then sit in that shadowy area. So we're adding in some sand here, blending it left to right. And then we want to go ahead and grab our eraser, tap on our eraser and use the soft brush, and just make sure that with about sort of a 13 to 15%, you just make sure that that yellow doesn't go too far back. We only want the kind of yellowy tone to sit down here. And then what we want to do is we want to go back to our layers. We want to tap on the layer and we want to go all the way down to the very bottom to color. And I think around about sort of the 90% looks pretty good. You get that nice yellowy sort of tone there in the ground. You can push that a little bit further back to the right and left if you need to. It's on a separate layer, so you get the option to at least adjust it. There we go. So we've got some nice sandy tones down here. Now let's go ahead and start to work on our sort of plinth area here in the middle. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to turn on our guide again. We're going to go in front of our rocks and create a new layer. We'll create another new layer and swipe from left to right, and we'll group that together and we'll call it plinth. So we'll go plinth. And we'll go to the bottom layer out of the two. We'll go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here, top left of the palette. Your brush wants to be calligraphy and the monoline brush. And we're going to draw it in. I'm going to just bring my guide down to around about 60% and tap on it and invert it back to black so you can see it like so. And again, in that group, bottom color, we just want to go ahead and draw this in. So we're going to go ahead and create a vertical line down here. Do not worry if your lines are not straight. If anything, it will look better. Just draw those in. We'll go ahead and draw in the very bottom edge. And then we'll go ahead and draw in the round top back area all the way around to that opposite side and drag and drop your colour in. Then go to your layers and go to the layer above and tap on it and clip it to the layer below. So it's clipped to your big shape here. Then go to your colours and grab the colour at the top of the second column there. And you want to go ahead and go around here, follow the guideline there at the edge of the rock, all the way around and go all the way around to the opposite side. Drag and drop the colour in and you've got the top surface then. Let's just go ahead and quickly repeat that for the one above. So we'll create another new layer. Go to your colours and grab the colour in the top left of the palette. And we'll draw in the next one as well. So it's just here. Draw that in like so. Go along the bottom edge. You see, I really do not care if it's not perfect at all. It just adds a little bit more to the flavour and the style of this one, in my opinion. I'll drag and drop the colour in. The only thing I would get rid of though is that little overhang there. It just hangs over the right hand side. That's just in my design. There we go. And then again, we'll go to the layer. We'll create a new layer and tap on it and clip it to the top. And then we'll go to our colours and grab the top of the second column there. And we're going to start here, making our way around here, creating that ellipse style shape all the way around and drag and drop your colour in. Go right up into those edges and pinch like so. Next, let's go ahead and add some colour to these. So we're going to go ahead and turn off our guide. We don't need that on for a minute. The bottom layer out of the 4 of these in here, we're going to tap on it and alpha lock it. I'm going to go to our colours and grab the middle of the first column there. Your brush wants to be painting and the stucco brush. Let's set it to around about 7%. Now this colour, you probably won't even be able to see it on screen. I can barely see it in front of me. It's very, very faint, but it's just a couple of different hues of colour. So just wiggle it across. That's all you need to do a couple of times. Then go to your colours and grab this grey, the bottom left of the palette. This is where we can then bring out the edges over here. So just like a little bit of the stucco brush coming around. Lovely. A little bit coming around here too. A couple of dashes and scrapes in this middle area. Just a few just to show that it is stone, like so. And then we can also go ahead and grab our colours. We can just about squeeze in a little bit of this colour, top of the second column. Really, really light though. A really, really light. Couple of scrapes of just a kind of lighter stone-like colour. And I don't mind the odd little random loose patch, but it's got to fit in a certain way for me. And then we also want to go ahead and just go around the top surface using that colour. We want to end up with like a bit of an uneven edge here. So it doesn't look like the monoline essentially. We want to just draw it around the edge here. Hopefully not coming too low down. It's just got to sit here as if the edge of the top surface is not a sheer cut. It's somewhat rounding in some areas. Now just leave like that for a minute. Go to your layer above and tap on it and alpha lock that one. So we're on the light tone here. Then go to your colours. We want to go ahead and introduce multiple tones in here. So we're going to go to our, let's grab the bottom colour in the second column. And then somewhat pointing outwards from here, we want to start to sort of pivot out constantly outwards from that point. Adding in some different kind of darker hues in here to start with, and definitely around the base here. Like so, pushing that all the way to the edges though. And you can draw some right on the far side on the edges. Kind of break down that monoline aesthetic to it. And along the edges as well, right in front of us. And then we can switch our colour. We can go ahead and grab the middle colour in the second column. Brush set to around about 4 or 5%, and we're just going to highlight in here, leaving that base around the edge there, or something like that. Lovely. Awesome, that's got some nice colour to it. Now we've done that, you can then revert back down to your base layer and go to your colours and grab the light tone at the top of that second column again, and just maybe add in a few more. So at this point you don't want to overdo it basically too early. You can add in a few scrapes of the stone in here. Yes, it's a shaded side. Yes, it's not getting any direct lighting, but we can add some accents of the stone colour. You don't want to make it too sheer of a difference necessarily. And again, by adding this kind of little lip around the edge here, you kind of show that the rock is not perfectly cut. It has a little bit of an edge to it that's rounded almost. Lovely. Now, at the same time, we also want to introduce some grooves and cuts to the top. Now, I want to go ahead and create a new layer for that and tap on it and clip it. Now, of course, I'm clipped to the whole shape, so just bear that in mind. So if you go to your base color top left of the palette, we want to run in some grooves that run through here. So maybe like a 4% in here, and you can just tap a few times, really break down the rock. You can go over the edges that we created here. That basically kind of merges those lines together. You lose the sort of side profile and the top side, and it really kind of creates that illusion that it's just one solid piece of rock, which of course it is. Then let's make the brush size fairly large. Let's go to about 10% and see if we can just introduce scrapes and cuts and dashes and anything a bit uneven in that top surface, just to create erosion, breakdown. We can go around the base here of the layer above as well, just darkening that up just a tiny bit as well. That's looking awesome. We can go ahead and run like a 3% and go boom, straight through some of those rocks. Maybe there was a battle here at some point for the staff itself, and there's some damage to it, something got thrown at it. You can always come up with stories for it. I always say if you can come up with a convincing story, that's as much justification as you need to add something in. You could even add something crazy like a set of like claws almost, like real claw marks in here, like a couple of lines of something that's scratched through here, really scratched in there. It's totally up to you if you want to leave that kind of thing in there. I think it looks great. And if you do something like that, you can always grab this color here, the middle of the second column, and you can go ahead and just accent it by going right up against it with the brighter tone, and it will show it as a groove then. So you can bring that down to 1%. You can basically draw either side of those lines to kind of indent them into the surface a little bit. So hopefully they get like a little bit more of an indentation to it. Now, everything we've done on these ones, we now need to repeat above. If you want to, just duplicate this and scale it down, but the perspective might be a little bit off, so you might have to flatten it. But I like to draw everything myself, so let's tap on the layer above and alpha lock it. Let's go to our colors and grab then the middle of the first column there, and the brush wants to be around about 4 or 5%. You can barely see this color, I know. And then go to the bottom color in that first column, your lovely gray tones, and add some of those in. Rounding it off a little bit to start with, and the scrapes, etc. A few scrapes in there will look good. Just a little something like that. A little bit more patchy. Then go to your colors. Let's go ahead and add the lightest amount again of that yellow, so the top of the second column. Just a tiniest little bit in some of here, and especially around that top edge again, as we did before. So you want that kind of unsharp edge to it. You want it a bit more beveled. Couple of scrapes of the yellowy stone. You can kind of get a gauge for it from the layer below, to be honest. So nothing sort of too wide and patchy like that, but just a few like that to start with. And maybe even all the way down to the bottom edge as well. Lovely. And then let's do the top surface. Let's tap on that. Let's tap on it and alpha lock it. Let's go to our colors and grab the light tone first of all. So it's this one here, the middle of the second column. 3% brush size. You basically just kind of want to go side by side almost, and then pivot out a few lines like this. It's a very flat area, so we can get away with doing it fairly quick. And then grab the bottom of the second column, a little bit of a greeny tone almost to it. This is where you can get rid of that edge at the back, maybe just a tiny bit, kind of tone down that sharp edge. Fade that in around some of these edges as well, a couple of scrapes, a couple of, little something happening. And then just like before, we'll go ahead and go to our layers. In fact, we'll go create a new layer and tap on it and clipping mask it also. And we'll add those dark tones, top of the first column. We want to then scrape these through, get rid of that sort of line that we can see between the two sides, scraping that across. Run in like a 3% maybe through the side profiles here. Something a little bit darker as well at the bottom. Lovely. Should have this lovely rocky surface to it. You don't need to add too much to the top compared to the other side, or this side, shall I say, because you can't really see it that well. Now, before we carry on, let's add a shadow to the bottom of this. So we're going to go to our layers. We had this layer here under our rocks. You'll be able to see it flashing there on the left-hand side. If I go to that layer, we go to our colors and we grab the blue. Let's grab the blue top of the second column from the right. Your brush wants to be set to airbrushing in the soft brush. Let's set the brush size to around about 3% and let's zoom in and go all the way around that kind of base area here. So maybe a bit bigger than that, maybe about 4 or 5. Go around the base, darkening that up right around the very bottom edge. Adding a lovely little bit of blue onto our ground. And then go to the base color top left of the palette and make this one the tighter shadow. So this one's around about 3 or 4% now. I'm just trying to get really tight to the edge of the shape, showing that it sits on the surface. Lovely. You should end up with a lovely shadow like so. So let's then go ahead and go to our layers. Let's go ahead and turn on our guide. We're going to go ahead and collapse the plinth group down. We'll create a new layer underneath our guide. We're going to go ahead and go to our guide and turn it up to max. We're also going to go to our actions and go to the option of canvas and go to the option of drawing guide. Edit that drawing guide to the option of symmetry and make sure the option is set to vertical. If you hit done, you will then end up with a line running straight down the middle of your staff there in the middle. You can then go ahead and go to your colors and let's grab the color that is the middle of the 5th column. Your brush wants to be set to calligraphy and the monoline brush set to the very small 1%. And we're going to draw in our little staff here. Now, what we want to make sure you do is if you go to your layer, tap on it and make sure drawing assist is turned on. That way it will use the symmetry option like so. So you can just do the work the once. We're going down into kind of a midpoint of the plinth there. So we're going to sort of narrow it a little bit towards the top. So you can just draw in those lines to start with and then just round them off at the bottom. Let's go ahead and zoom in and just create our beautiful designed staff here. You can go ahead and sharpen up a few points if you wish. You can always go ahead and erase in a moment like so. In fact, let's go to our brush, let's tap on it and boost the stabilization up to streamline up to max, stabilization up to around about 45. That way we'll get some lovely smooth lines in here. You can draw out to there, curve it in like so, and then go ahead and draw in from up here all the way into there. I'm drawing another line all the way up into here. We'll do a curve out like so, and then we'll draw in a straight line all the way up. Hold your pen down and then you can just get that lined up in the middle. If you don't, go up to here and edit the line, you'll get this blue point. And as long as this blue point just sits on your symmetry line in the middle, you're good to go. You can tap away and it will just run into a lovely point at the top. Then drag and drop your color into it. You have your outline shape now ready to go. And it's at this point that we start layering in some color. So we're going to go ahead and go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer, tap on it and clip it to the staff, and we'll group them together by swiping from left to right and group. And we'll just call this staff. Let's go to the layer that's clipped, tap on it and make sure it's using the drawing assist. So we only have to do the work the once. We're going to go to our brush. We're going to go into the option of inking. We're going to use the inker brush here. And we're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the bottom of the 5th column. And brush size is around about 6%. Could probably go a little bit larger than that, about 9%. The first thing I'm going to do is draw in a line that goes down the staff here. And I want to make sure it's right on the edge. So I'm going to go down again, hold my pen down and just move it off to the right hand side. And that should just then darken up the edges a little bit, giving us maybe some reflections of some things in there, like a bit of a metallic surface almost. And then we want to go ahead and darken up under here. Now notice how I need to go back to my base shape, don't I? I need to grab the middle of the 5th column and just very quickly just add in with the monoline brush some little gaps that were just left. Now I did mention that you can also sharpen these up if you want to. If you grab your eraser and tap on your eraser and go to the monoline brush, you set this to about 8%. You can just go ahead and cut into there, hold your pen down and really sharpen up those edges if you want to, getting rid of some of those really kind of rounded monoline kind of shapes. The only thing you have to bear in mind is that you want to create like arcs, etc., to make sure that they're nice and, you know, they run seamlessly into their lines. The ones up here, I'm not too fussed about, to be honest. They all look pretty good like they are. Now let's go ahead and go back to the bottom of the 5th column. Brush wants to go back into inking in the inker brush, and my layer wants to go back to the clip layer. Let's then zoom in, and we can go ahead and just draw in some under shadows here of that kind of area here. So every time there's a point that sticks out, we want to shadow basically underneath it, and just run some color into the middle, just some detail. We'll go ahead and we'll just basically curve that round and just fade that down towards that little ledge that's going to be a bit brighter here. Let's zoom in. Let's go ahead and just somewhat run a bit of a curve here. So you're going to have to follow suit as I go here, just to kind of match up. We're going to go underside of there. We're then going to go ahead and start to think about the underside of other areas, which is going to be sort of here. Look at where I am. I'm pressing really firm. Now I'm going to come in and bring that into the middle, like so. So it follows these beautiful curves in here. We'll add some sort of darker elements to the middle here. Again, maybe like reflection style elements. Darkening up into there, into the center. I'll darken up into there as well. And then at the top, we're just adding in a bit of a shadowed edge for a moment, and that comes into the center. So we're just adding in all of these elements that we're going to build on top of anyway. And maybe we'll just sort of screw that in a bit more. We're then going to go to our layers. We're going to create another new layer, tap on it, clipping mask it, tap on it, and drawing assist it. Go to your colors. We want to grab the bottom of the, what column is that? 5th from the right. We're going to go ahead and add in some somewhat highlight tones, almost like mid though. So we're going to go ahead and draw into around about, say, here. And then we're going to follow this edge all the way round. So we're going to draw in a little something like this. Lovely. And we'll come down this edge here, and we're going to swoop it into the middle. Add in a little bit on the underside there. I'm going to zoom out. Yep. So take a look at those there for a moment. And then here, we're going to go ahead and add in some like scrapes, horizontal scrapes. Round it, hopefully. Add in little dashes. And then we'll do the same here. We'll just do a little bit under here. So we're getting a little bit more narrow towards the middle. And then in your staff, you can go ahead and then run a little bit of a straight line all the way down to the edges. You've got a few of those greens still in play there, but they're a little bit more subtle now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers again. We'll create a new layer. We'll tap on it and we will clipping mask it, and again tap on it and drawing assist it. Go to your colors and grab this color here, top of the 5th column from the right there. We're going to add in some brighter tones where we know we want them. So a little bit on this top edge here. I don't want to make that too large. I want to just kind of scrape that in from the edge like so. I want to come down this edge here all the way down towards that. And then we're going to go ahead and go around the inside here, up and round. And I'm just going to tidy up the corner there. And I'm going to bring in one that comes sort of through here. And then maybe another one underneath it like this. We'll go ahead and round off a little bit of lighting there. A little bit on this top surface now. A couple of scrapes maybe in there. Let's add the tiniest bit on the point over on this edge over here. And we'll add in onto this and then scrape upwards like so. Maybe even just a little bit lower down on there. And then in the middle of your stuff, we can go ahead and sort of draw in a bit of a straight line. You can leave a bit of a gap if you wish, just a little something like that's reflecting some light around. And then we'll go ahead and add in our main highlights here. Now this layer that we just created, you can go to your adjustments and go to Gauge and Blur, and you can blur it the tiniest bit, around about sort of 2 to 3%. So that was the lines we just created. Then you can go to your layers, create another new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it, and tap on it and drawing assist it. We are going to go to our brushes. We're going to go into the option of luminance for yourself. And we are going to go ahead and use the light brush. I've got a size set to 7%, and watch this brush. If you go down here with a lot of pressure, it's going to go white. Okay. If you press really lightly, you'll start to build up some glow. So pick and choose where you want it to be nice and bright. Now we definitely want the sort of tip up here to be fairly bright. So I'm going to go down it a few times until it gets this whiter look to it. The areas in here, I'm going to turn off my guide because I don't need that on for a moment. I'm going to go ahead and bring in some lighting around there into here. We want those kind of whiter tones in here. Let's bring in a little bit into the body. So let's actually do that again on top of that highlight. Now we don't want to overdo this. In my practices before this, when I drew this in the first time, I went way too bright with this and it didn't have the same aesthetic to it. If you keep it a bit more subtle and you add in a few areas in here just to kind of fill out the gold, like sort of vibe to this, I think it looks better by leaving these darker tones in here. Your preference may be different though, so it's totally up to you. A little bit in here with a couple of light ones, very, very, very light. When I tell you I'm pressing lightly on my screen, I am just stroking it at the minute. A little brighter ledge like so. We'll add in the tiniest little bit on the corners over there. And we'll also add in a little bit onto this ledge as well. Fading that up, layering it on top. Hopefully you've got this beautiful golden style to yours as well. You can set the brush size a bit bigger if you want to, like a 23%, and just sort of add in a few extra strokes in there. But I urge you to leave this kind of darker look to it in here. And then that way you end up with just purposeful highlights rather than the whole thing be too glowy. Now at this point, we need to add in a few different lighting effects as well. So first of all, we just need to go ahead and go to our plinth group. You can go ahead and this layer here that's got like our shadows on, that's clipped to the very top stone, just go to your colors and grab the color here, top left of the palette. Set your brush to the option of, let's go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Really small brush size, around about 2%. And we just want to just darken up the bottom here as if the plinth, has like some sort of area here where it dips into. Then grab your eraser and tap on it and use the monoline brush and just cut straight across it like so. That way it looks like it dips down into the rock instead. Now we want to go ahead and we want to go to our our staff, sorry. We want to go ahead and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the top group and go ahead and flatten it. And then we want to go ahead and tap on it and change its blend mode to the option of add. Set the blend opacity to around about 40%. And then you can also go ahead and tap on this layer and swipe it to the left and duplicate it and drag it underneath the staff. So you've got one above and one below. Now the top one, go ahead and tap on it, go to your adjustments and go to Gauge and Blur and swipe from left to right. And we want to add a lovely glow to this, around about sort of 16 to 20%. And then tap on your adjustments when you're done. Then go to your layers and go down to the one underneath. Go to your adjustments and go to Gauge and Blur and swipe this way out. We want to make it really go beyond there. So round about sort of 30 to 35%. So round about in the middle will look great, of course. And then tap on your adjustments when you're done. Let's then go ahead and add in some light rays from the top as well. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go above everything and below our guide. Create a new layer. We're going to go ahead and go to our colors and grab this color here, bottom right of the palette. Let's go to our brush and make sure it's a soft brush. Under airbrushing and a brush size around about sort of 4 to 5%. We want to go ahead and just draw in some lines, getting progressively more angled. So if I drew them in really hard, for example, we want the middle ones to be straight and then these ones to be angled and then everything in between in those gaps. So some light areas of lighting coming through. You can vary the size. You can make some of them like 3% if you want to. I wouldn't overdo this for the moment. And this isn't the final blend mode either. So if you think that they're a little bit too bright, they may change color slightly in a minute with the blend mode change. So we've got a couple of light rays coming through here. I might even set a smaller one down to around about 3% and just run one somewhat straight down there like so. A couple of little smaller ones in the gaps look really cool. Then as I mentioned, go to the layer, tap on it and change its blend mode to the option of overlay. So set that back overlay. Now you may lose a little bit of them depending on how much pressure you've added in. You can always turn your layer on and off just to see the difference. If you need to, like I do, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, and then you'll boost them up again. By all means, do it one more time if you want to. Go up to something around about 3 or 4. It's totally up to you depending on how much lighting you want to add in. And if that last one you think is maybe a little bit too much like me, bring it down to around about 50%. And we got some nice varied lighting. Now at this point, because we have a light source of our staff in the middle, we can also go ahead and maybe add some lighting to these rocks, keeping it very simple. A new layer in front of the rocks group. We'll go ahead and tap on it and change its blend mode to add and bring the opacity right down to around about 30%. If we go to our colors and we grab the color here, top of the fifth color from the right, We'll go to our brush and the soft brush. If we set that to around about sort of 5 or 6%, something around about there, maybe 4, we can go along these rocks here. Now, you may want to make it a bit smaller and be really purposeful and go right up to some of those edges and add in some lighting on there to show the staff and its glow and how it's affecting everything around it. The rock in behind too has a flat surface that's facing it quite a lot, so I can get in there and go along that rock in behind. I can add some onto there too, a little bit on that one there, and maybe the tiniest bit back there as well. Hopefully now starting to think about tying it all together. We'll go along the rock here, brightening up the edge. I don't want it to run off the edge too much, but it doesn't matter if it does. Go along there, a little bit on there too. And then if you want to, you can tap on it and bring its opacity up just a little bit more, maybe up to around about 40%. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go down to this layer here that we set for the background color. We're going to create a new layer. So it's the ground in front of the ground down here. We're going to go ahead and set the blend mode from normal to add. Same color. I'm going to leave the opacity at max for a minute, about 5%. I'm just going to sort of wiggle my pen in these gaps here. I want to kind of show that there is a lot of bright glow happening here. Now, to start with, as I mentioned, I've left the opacity at 100% so that we can tone it down if we want to, which we are going to do. We're going to go ahead and tap on it and bring its opacity down. I'll bring it down to around about sort of the 70% mark. And we want to also do another layer in our plinth group. Now, you can clip this if you want to, or you can just simply go ahead and create a new layer in front of the plinth group. Set the blend mode from normal to add. We'll bring that opacity down, down to about 3%, and we'll lightly start to add in a bit of a glow through here. You can see that warm color change on top of that surface. And then we'll go into about 2% on here, add in a fairly good amount of glow on here, because I want to show how that's just pinging right down onto that surface. Now at this point we can have some fun and add in some final extra details, really, additions to the design. You can create a new layer right at the top of your layers. Just drag it underneath those light rays though. So push it underneath those 3 light rays. If you want to, swipe from left to right on those as well, group them together and just call them rays. That way you can keep an eye on them in your layers and collapse the group down. I know we've got a lot of layers today, so I appreciate you following along with all of those. Now the layer underneath that we just created, we're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab this color here, top of the second column from the right. We'll go to our brush and make sure it's set to calligraphy and the monoline brush. Let's draw in a very simple fish shape. So we'll go ahead and first of all, we'll just draw in a curve, hold your pen down, draw in a curve to the opposite end and hold your pen down. And then from there, you can just about see the end. You can go ahead and just kind of fishtail that out a little bit and then into the body again. And drag and drop the color into both of those areas and you should end up with the basic silhouette of a fish. Then what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to add in some basic colors to it and then duplicate this layer multiple times. So we're going to grab the middle here of the second column from the right. Your brush wants to be set to airbrushing and the soft brush. We're going to go back to the layer and tap on it and alpha lock it. We're going to go ahead and brighten up the top area with about sort of a 4 to 5% brush size. Brighten up the top edge. Brighten up the bottom edge, so leaving that dark blue in the middle. Then go to your colors. Go ahead and grab the color tone here. It is the bottom of that third column from the right. Smaller brush size now, about 2%, and go right over that top edge. And then go up the back there. Set the brush size to about 1%, and then in here, just drawing some very basic, like edge of the fins there on the edge. And then you can draw in a couple of lines underneath it if you want to kind of flush out that shape a little bit more. It's not really critical, to be honest, just a basic sort of illusion and nod to it. In fact, I'll even get rid of the last one. I just want to add a little bit there and then maybe just like some basic sort of details there in like a mouth area and some sort of area indent for the eye. Really, really simple. It's not meant to be anything detailed in any sense, as you can tell. Maybe a couple of lines on the back there, but that's about it. Okay, that's going to be our fish sort of silhouette. We're then going to go ahead and go to our layers. We're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate it. We're going to turn off both and swipe from left to right on both and group them together. So we're going to leave this top one here as like a template that we can go back to. The bottom one out the two. Now turn it on. We want to go ahead and grab your cursor. we can use distort and we can squish it sideways. We can go ahead and bring out the tail a little bit more on this right side, really squish that down and change its angle. You may want to make it a bit more narrow. You may want to go ahead and use warp and, you know, move the body around, have some fun just distorting them, creating different fish silhouettes. Doesn't want to be anything interesting, to be honest. Something really simple. And they want to be much smaller than this. We also want to grab uniform and scale it right down, because we want to add like fish in here, but we want to show the grandness of all of this area here. So that is the scale that your fish is going to end up at. That's why we didn't add too much detail to it. Now, if you like the angle of that one, just go to that and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor and just move it around. Maybe make it a bit bigger, move one a bit further down, rotate it slightly. Grab another one, duplicate it, move a few in here, like so. Move that one right towards the bottom, and definitely try and make sure that there's a few with scale. You know, bring that down, move it right towards the back. Now the ones at the very back, we're going to blur. We're going to get rid of them because they're going to blur a lot like these columns. So just factor that in, bear that in mind. Really scale it down, add in some more back there. Definitely make sure though that you also flip some horizontally. They don't all need to be going the same direction, and definitely just try and fill out your whole scene. So basically this part of the design is the same sort of thing when I do stars. You know, we're just trying to duplicate the layer multiple times, create a filled out scene basically. So a couple of little fish there floating around. When you're happy with that, you can duplicate it and move it across, or you can just keep going until you filled out both sides. So you can move a fish over there. There's a little tiny one. Hopefully I'm not going too fast for you, but you understand the principle anyway of having to grab all of these fish, flip them horizontally, rotate them, put a couple together if you want to, you know, push one right next to the other and rotate it a little bit of a different angle maybe. You know, don't be afraid to cluster some. Bit like stars, aren't they? Basically our filler content. Definitely going to move some more towards the back and keep going. The only thing I definitely need to keep doing and just remembering to do is just rotating them enough that we get some variation in them, and also flipping them horizontally as well. We do want to somewhat use them as kind of guidelines though. We want them to kind of all be somewhat pointing towards the middle, just so that they nod to where our work is, all of our hard work. We want to kind of say, no, don't point inwards. This is where we want you to look. So we've got lots of fish here. You may, if you're struggling already for layers, just pinch them all together. It's up to you. Don't be afraid to put some up here as well. They'll look great because they'll look like silhouettes. Just beautiful silhouettes. I'll flip that horizontally. I'll rotate it. I will scale it down in size as well. Put one up there. They'll look great in a minute. And bring that one down, rotate it, uniform. In fact, I'll push this one over here. Lovely. Got some lovely fish. And I do urge you to spend quite a bit of time if you can on here. Let's go ahead though and pinch them together. All of those except that one that we've got turned off at the top. So now you've got one layer with all your fish on. Then what you can do is you can tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Go to your adjustments and go to the option of Gauge and Blur. And again, tap up here and go to the option of Pencil. And you've got your Gauge and Blur. Now go to your brush and change your brush to the soft brush under airbrushing. And then you now need to pick which ones are really far back and which ones aren't. So you can just lightly wiggle your pen over the top. It's pressure sensitive. Even though it's set to 60%, you're still in control. So blur some out. If you think that they're a little bit further back, they'll get a little bit more murky. Look at that. There's a fish back there, but it's just its silhouette. I think that looks great. We'll blur out this one a little bit up there. The ones that I definitely think are a little bit further back. Now, the rules don't necessarily mean that just because they're further back, they're the smallest. You can have a large fish back there, but it's blurred out a lot. That just means that it's obviously a fairly large fish back there. So just have some fun thinking about the different levels in which you can blur out some of these fishes. Definitely get rid of some at the back there. I'll definitely get rid of this little guy up here. That one can probably stay. And that one back there can definitely get a little bit more blurred out. Lovely. And as I mentioned, I urge you to do as many of these as you can. I would urge you to duplicate it, flip it horizontally, you know, just take a look, maybe move it around, see what you can come up with, maybe even scale it down and just pick, one half of that. So I'll erase all of this over here on the right side. I'll get rid of all of these fish that I just duplicated on that extra version. So I've just scaled down another version, just getting rid of all of the excess of any other ones. And then I should have, I've got a little bit of excess there, I can see, sorry. Get rid of those marks. Then grab the cursor, scale it down in size, and just put some smaller fish in here. So we've got some smaller ones in front of our columns, and then maybe even swipe that to the left and duplicate it and grab your cursor, flip it horizontally, move that up to the right hand side. If you can fill this out with fish, it will look fantastic. Let's go ahead and move this one, say a little bit higher, maybe up here. Don't be afraid though to go back to that step that we did before in adjustments and Gaussian blur. So go to Gaussian blur and just blur out a few of these. If you set it to pencil, blur out a few of these that it's applicable to. So we need to go to our brush, blur them out. Lovely. I love these ones that sit in front of the column. I think they look fantastic. Blurring out a few of those ones that are up there. Lovely. I love all the little tiny schools of them. So I'm just going to keep going, to be honest. I really like the aesthetic of it. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to make that one a bit smaller, move it a little bit higher. Just as long as you're not getting any sort of blatant, obvious repetition, you should be fine. But I've got all of those in there, and I can just keep going. I'm just duplicating and making them a bit smaller every time. And maybe I'll push a few more back here. And as long as you don't get the repetition, then you're fine. But you may need to think about, okay, hang on, can I actually delete a few of those? Or just keep going and filling out and flushing out your scene. So hopefully your layer counts are not getting too badly destroyed. At any point, you can always go ahead and just pinch them together. You can always go in here, pinch them together. I can turn it on and off just to see what I've got here. And I've got like a school of them over here on the left now. I could swipe that to the left now and duplicate it and grab my cursor and just move that off. I could even flip it horizontally now and fill out this opposite side as well. Maybe there's a school, but it's a bit higher up here on the right hand side, and tap on my cursor. Just as long as you don't add too many in the wrong areas, maybe I could get rid of a few of these up here to just stray a little bit up towards the surface, a bit too much. And most definitely we want to avoid anything getting in front of our column here, our staff here, should I say. It's definitely going to be on one of those layers. So I've got a school of them up there, school of them down here. Keep going. I don't want you to draw in a boatload of fish. That's the thing. I want you to, use the tools we've got available to us and see if you can, quickly add that all in. Duplicating that and moving it off to the left. They look like they're following some sort of route all the way through here. So I'm just getting rid of a few that I blatantly don't want. I've got this awesome little school happening over here. Move that across, and I can see I've got blatant repetition up here now. I'll get rid of all of these. But they're coming together nice. Look at them flowing through there. They look awesome. Let's go back a layer. Let's get rid of that one up there. Get rid of that one. And don't be afraid though to go back in with the larger fish. Don't be afraid to go back to this layer that we created. Turn it on. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Turn off the top one and grab the bottom one. Grab your cursor. You've got a big fish here now. And then maybe this guy can sit somewhere. If it's getting too close, you may need to detail it. So just bear that in mind. Maybe you've got a big one that's sort of drifting in from the side of the screen over there. That gives you a little bit more depth to play with. Go back, duplicate the other one, turn it on again. Grab your cursor, flip it horizontally, or definitely not vertically. It's not going to be upside down. Rotate it. Don't be afraid to get in there, as I mentioned, and warp it, just so it looks a little bit different from the other ones. Maybe this one's a little bit more squished together. Grab your cursor. I'll just bring the nose of it back a little bit and then scale it. I'll move it up towards here. I don't want it to cover up too much of my rock work. I really like what I've done on the column, so I'm just utilizing the larger fish now just to flush out the whole scene. Now what you can do is when you're completely done with all of your fish, you can pinch them together. If you like the look of them, leave it. You can scroll through the different blend modes. Now for me, if you go all the way to the very bottom and go to luminosity, they start to get a little bit more of the colors of our design come through in their colors. So they're not quite as dark now, not taking up too much of the scene. Now, talking of the scene, we've got a couple of other things that we can do. We can go ahead and go in front of our rays at the very top and create a new layer. We can go to our colors and grab the color here, top left of the palette. And if we go to our soft airbrush, we go ahead and set this to around about, say, 20%. We can start to vignette our design a little bit. So we can darken up the top right and top left, roll it around the corners, just trying to focus the lighting and attention to the very center of your design. By all means, turn this on and off and see if you like the look before and after. It's totally optional, and maybe you want to sort of keep a little bit more of it at the bottom. For me though, it tightens up your design. It keeps you focused on the center. Now, one other thing you can do, and I've done this in the previous underwater tutorial, to kind of give it that underwater murky look, you can swipe down with 3 fingers and go to copy all. It's exactly what we did earlier. We can go up to our layers and create a new layer right at the tippity top. And you can swipe down with 3 fingers and go to paste. If you then go to the layer and change its blend mode to the option of lighten, and you go to your adjustments and you go to gauge and blur, you can swipe from left to right. You can go up to something really subtle, like an 8%. You can go much further beyond that if you want to. It's up to you if you want to add this and get rid of that sharper look to everything. Even something as low as, say, a 2 and 3% look pretty good because it gives you a little bit of that murkiness. I urge you to tap on your adjustments and go to your layer and just turn it on and off and just see how it just blurs a little bit of your work and gives it a softer edge to it. But that is completely optional. But we are done with today's design. So we'll turn off our drawing guide. We will pinch with 2 fingers. We'll go full screen with 4 and we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations wherever you decide to share them. I'm pretty much everywhere. And if you want to get access to a catalogue of over 100 Patreon exclusive tutorials, of course, the only place you can find them is over on my Patreon. There's a link to my Patreon in the description down below where you can go ahead and check out all of the tutorials that I've made over there. You can have your name featured in videos, sneak peeks, early access, and much, much more. So check the link in the description down below and come and show your support. And if you like this video here on YouTube, you'll love this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.